I had learned over the previous 10 years that I could be whoever I wanted to be. I mean, I had worked in a new industry every couple of years. I had built companies from the ground up. And I kind of felt like there was no challenge I couldn't take on as long as it felt in alignment with the way that I wanted to work.
This is the Happen to Your Career podcast with Scott Anthony Barlow.
We help you stop doing work that doesn't fit you, figure out what does, and make it happen.
We help you define the work that is unapologetically you and then go get it.
If you feel like you were meant for more and you're ready to make a change, keep listening.
Here's Scott.
Here's Scott.
Here's Scott.
Imagine reaching the pinnacle of your career field, only to walk away and pursue something entirely new, something that sparks your curiosity and excites you instead of simply following the expected next step of your career. Now, imagine doing that not once, not twice, but many times. Today's guest has done exactly that. She's gone from attorney to marketing director to head of business to chief operations officer. She's even been a professional certified coach guiding others on their own career paths. Here's the kicker. She never had to start over. She was able to run towards roles that lit her up and evolve her career into iterations that fit her better and better every time. I think it's time to rethink what it means to have a successful career. Maybe the job that you once loved is starting to feel stale, yet you're still holding on. But what if outgrowing each role you take on and running towards something that excites you is actually the key to building a fulfilling career?
And they were also so kind because they knew that it got to a point where we think that you probably need a role somewhere else. We think you've outgrown this role and there's nothing else we can give you here.
That's Heather Yurovsky. And as you heard, Heather has had many dream roles in her life, moving from the legal world into startups, even launching her own business along the way. Most people would stay in each of these roles for 20 or 30 or even 40 years, but Heather's path is anything but typical, moving from role to role, each a position that many would consider a final destination. She's continuously evolved, choosing to leave each role behind when it no longer aligned with her vision of fulfillment. Today, Heather leads our entire client results team here at Happen to Your Career. She draws on her wealth of experience to coach clients and that we get to work with and lead all of our coaches on our team. She gets to blend everything she's learned from marketing, sales, and her own career transitions to help others figure out their next steps. Pretty cool, right? So I want you to pay attention to how she talks about repeatedly reaching a ceiling in her career and how she navigated the emotional complexities of leaving behind roles that once felt like the perfect fit. And also why outgrowing a position does not mean that you're giving up on success. Quick little bit of backstory before Heather joined us on our team here at Happen to Your Career. We worked with her to get her on the team for almost 2 years. And I think the really fun thing here is that it literally was a product of 2 years worth of work and her role modeling and walking the walk with everything that we teach that allowed her to end up in this role that is a phenomenal fit for her, but also in terms of how we benefit as an organization and our team. So she literally walks the walk in every aspect. One more thing before we jump into. Samantha from our team actually got to sit down with Heather to talk about her journey. So that's who you'll be hearing from today. All right, I'm going to let Samantha and Heather take it away. But first, here's Heather sharing where her career began.
I think growing up, I had always glamorized the idea of being in advertising in my mind. I really enjoyed watching commercials, which I know now everybody wants to skip them or avoid them altogether. But I really loved the idea of branding and advertising and messaging. So I had these two parallel ideas in my mind of what my career would look like. One half of me really liked the idea of being in advertising and working in a big agency. And I didn't really know what was involved, but I kind of pictured the big corner office and getting to wear nice clothes to work and coming up with cool ideas and working with interesting creative people. And then the other half of me had grown up in the law. I had a lot of exposure to it just between my parents getting divorced when I was young. So really kind of just always having family law as a part of my being and existence. And so the other half of me also wanted to practice law in some way. It was a less clear vision, other than I felt like, hey, I kind of understand this. I do feel really passionately about helping others and making their lives better and easier. And I really like the idea of solving problems and really just gathering lots and lots of information to do that. So ultimately, I studied advertising in undergrad, knowing that I wanted to go to law school after I graduated. So, still running these parallel paths.
Mm-hmm.
I did get into law school. I went to law school about a year in, so it's 3 years. The first year, I kind of knew this is probably not what I want to do for my career.
What made you feel that way or recognize that so early?
I liked the idea of, like I said, problem solving. I liked the idea of really every issue being different and you really having to think holistically about things. I did not like the idea of it being a business. So I wanted to help people, didn't really want to have to think 10 steps ahead to maybe have that make you more money, or it really is the business of law that turned me off. But 1 year into law school, still a little too early to confirm that. Funny enough, when most of my friends were going to get summer associate or internships in law firms after their first year of law school, I went and had an internship at a well-known advertising agency down in Miami, Florida. And I was like, oh, this is certainly a funny experience. I think from the outside, many of my peers in the internship were like, wait, you're in law school. You're also a few years older than us. Like, this is our, freshman year of college internship. What are you doing here? And I was like, I just really like it. And if I don't try it on for size, I'm not going to know if it's something that's worth pursuing after I get out of law school. So I did it. It was a fantastic experience. It did confirm I did not necessarily want to do that after graduating. So I kind of shifted back to, all right, I'm in law school. The plan was to always finish and get my license, regardless if I wanted to practice or not. So let me put my full energy into this experience. So I really went heads down, really studied very, very hard my second and third years of law school. I wanted to graduate, with a GPA I could be proud of, an experience I could be proud of. And as I was applying for jobs coming out of law school, I kind of had that same moment where I'm like, none of this really sounds right. I don't know what it looks like. Maybe I could do intellectual property law to incorporate some of my interest in advertising. But I was really more drawn to the family law side of practicing, meaning how could I maybe help kids who didn't have support systems around them? How could I help couples going through divorce? Stop fighting over things that maybe weren't worth fighting about and kind of put the emotions aside and be a little bit more thoughtful in how they were spending their time and energy. So I said, I'll practice for a year, again, to try something on for size. I did it, confirmed, did not want to do it. And I was able to really confidently shut the door on that. And I knew I was just not going to be a practicing attorney moving forward.
Yeah. So after you you went into law for 1 year, did you do something similar after that, or was it a complete pivot?
Yeah. So after I realized I had just finished a trial and I had this moment of, that is it. I am beyond done with practicing, but where does this leave me? And I think a lot of people who have career coaches or are in a career transition or career crisis have that same moment where it's like, this is a thing that I've known. I have no idea what it translates into beyond this path. So I sat down, I did what many of my clients do. I perused the job boards. I was like, well, this doesn't look like it matches me. And this doesn't look like it matches me. And what does this all really mean? And so I kind of set aside the I'm a lawyer identity and was like, okay, but what do I actually like to do? And what do I think I'm good at? And it was more of operations roles and marketing roles because my problem solving skill set, I think, from being a lawyer allowed me to think like an operator, to say, okay, here's everything that probably needs to get done in the order it has to happen. And then, like I said, my kind of love for advertising and branding and communications never went away. So I ended up taking a marketing role with corporate events startup company. So they planned events for big companies, and they were kind enough to have me on to write their newsletters and help with kind of just miscellaneous marketing tasks. And the two women that hired me were so lovely. They really took a chance on me. I know that I did a great job and I know I was qualified for the role, but they did take a chance because I hadn't technically done that work. And they gave me lots of opportunities, exposed me to various aspects of the business. And I'd say there's where I really got the idea of, okay, I think I need to be in startups where I get to wear a lot of different hats. And they were also so kind because they knew that it got to a point where we think that you probably need a role somewhere else. We think you've outgrown this role and there's nothing else we can give you here. Yeah. So it was a really, I'd say, lovely, like empathetic way to start my career. And then so after working at the corporate events company, I took a marketing role with a travel agency. So even though they had been around for 20, 25 years when I joined, it operated much like a startup. And the reason that we were fit for each other was because they wanted to actually spin off a part of their business into a bachelorette party planning company. So it's essentially taking the travel agency and rebranding it and having a slightly different target audience. So I was very excited about that opportunity because it again allowed me to play to my marketing strengths, but also be that operator and okay, how do we get the whole business launched and functioning and everything connected so that we can really grow it. Ultimately, I ended up leaving because, again, I felt like I hit a ceiling where I was only going to be able to do so much. I also had started to really, I think, grow out of my more traditional marketing role and into an operator role. So I had a bigger desire to work on the operations side of a business or business where I had the ability to work more on the operations side than pure marketing. So from there, I joined a boutique spirits company. So it was two liquor brands, one that was a premium liqueur that was sold globally. And then I was brought on because they were launching or had just launched a mass market strawberry liqueur. They were expanding across the United States. So they brought me on as a marketing manager, I think was the title, a marketing director. And very, very quickly, I moved into a kind of head of business type role. So I was working really closely with the sales teams, with the ambassadors, training, figuring out what the distributors needed. I was deployed to different states to actually do in-field work. So work with our sales teams, get to understand the customer. So again, like that marketing side, but starting to tiptoe over into sales and then bringing all that back to headquarters into the operations side of the business. So how could we standardize everything we were doing across markets as much as possible?
It sounds like you were starting to find your niche more and more and more in these startups and helping them kick things off. So I know that's not where you are anymore. So what was it that you eventually found or figured out that made you want to transition out of that?
Yeah. So that was working at the spirits company was my second taste of being an early hire. So one of the first 10 employees. And after 4 years at the company, after getting a brand acquired by a very large name in the spirits industry, after kind of successfully growing the second brand, I again took a moment to be like, hold on, I need to pause for a second. I've just been running really, really fast for the last 4 years. And I have to stop for a second and think about what's next. And when I thought about what I was good at and what I thought I enjoyed, and I am alluding to, some foreshadowing here, I thought that I really enjoyed being that early employee that could touch all parts of the business, really help build it up to a certain point so that we could start bringing in specialists and then scale even further. So I was thinking, okay, I spent 4 years being essentially the right hand to the CEO, really helping him think through things, being a sounding board, while also being an operator in the business and doing sales and doing marketing. And it was a lot to digest, but it boiled down to I got to wear a lot of different hats and I got to help everybody else do their role as well as they could. So when I came time to say, okay, let me pause, pop my head up, an opportunity came across my desk to join another early stage startup, this time a social impact consulting firm, which I had no knowledge of the industry at all. And they were looking for a head of business. So very similar role, essentially someone to, plug the holes in the ship so that the ship could get sailing and then we could rebuild it as needed. So I ended up joining. It effectively functioned like a chief of staff. And when I joined, I said very clearly, like, my goal is to be a COO. And that's why I'm here. So I want a pathway to that. I'm going to work as if, that is what I'm working towards, which it was. And so after a year, just under a year, I did achieve that COO title. And then I worked for almost another year before I admitted everything was wrong about it. So everything I had worked to achieve, the goal I had set for myself, felt absolutely awful. Every day was really, really hard. And it was starting to affect my health. Like, I was not sleeping. I was certainly not present at home. I love my husband for putting up with me at that time because I was probably a shell of myself. I had just given too much of myself to too many companies back to back that I really, really burned myself out.
With everything that you know now, looking back at it, what was causing you to burn out at that level?
Yeah, it's a good
What
question.
was it about, I guess, the misalignment?
Yeah, the misalignment came from really owning an identity that I outgrew. So I think early in your career, it is okay to say, hey, give me more opportunities, or I want exposure to more parts of the work that are outside of my role, and say yes to a lot of things. And then I did not, that identity did not grow with me over the 10-year period. So I was still saying yes to a lot and taking on far more than I should have. I was also feeling very personally responsible for every aspect of the work that I was doing. And while I do believe in accountability and owning your role, I think now that I've had some distance from it, I also believe in, you do what you can, do it in a way that you're proud of, but at some point you have to leave it on a shelf and say, okay, I'm coming back to life outside of work.
It sounds like you were Jane of all trades at every place that you were. And then when you became COO, were you able to let some of those things go and delegate, or were you just still holding on to that Jane of all trades, I can do it?
Yeah, it's so funny that you say that because I did refer to myself as a Jill of all trades.
Oh.
And my middle name is Jill.
That's probably a better one because of Jack and Jill.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and when I became a coach, I had to work really hard on myself to drop that Jill of all trades. I had been so proud of it. I was like, this is me. Put me anywhere. I can do anything. I can solve any problem. I can help anyone. And I think when I became COO, everybody still saw that Jill of all trades in me, as opposed to, okay, now she's COO. Now we can't, I don't know if you've ever heard the phrase, like, leave the monkey on the desk. So people come in with their problems and drop it on your desk. And you're like, great, leave it here. I'll take care of it. I couldn't do that anymore. And I was still doing it. So even though my title changed, I'd say I was still working in a way that was not consistent with the way that I wanted to work. And I didn't really know how to find my way out of that.
So did you have a leader that you could go to and tell that to? Or what happened when you realized this was affecting your entire life negatively?
Yeah, I did. So I did talk about it, with the leadership team, and we were all in agreement. And I think it was a really nice way to transition out of the business. And I appreciate that they, wanted what was best for me. I also felt it was best for the business, that it was time for me to move on. And to be honest, I was so burnt out that I just needed to hit a huge reset button. I needed everything to stop. Like, I had went from, I want to be a COO of a, bespoke consulting firm and traveling the world and helping all of these amazing foundations and businesses change the world, to I want to stock water bottles on the shelves of a grocery store. Like, I just want a task that's repeated, that I can do over and over, that nobody else can be asking me about, because it's very clear that I'm picking a water bottle up and putting it on the shelf and then doing the next one and repeating. So I had never felt that way in my entire life. I had always considered myself very ambitious, a high achiever, and nothing felt like me. So I felt like I kind of had no choice at that moment other to say, this has to stop. I have to do something else. And I've got to rebuild myself. I've got to strip away everything that hasn't been stripped away yet and figure out who I am and who I want to be. And then what do I do so I can live that?
Mm-hmm. So you went back to the drawing board, it sounds like, after burnout. So what did you come out of the drawing board with?
Yeah. So I spent a lot of time essentially coaching myself. So to be honest, I had never heard of a career coach. This is about 6 years ago. And the only thing I knew in the career space was either being in people operations. So again, an operations role internally at a company, or I had met somebody who was a resume writer. And I was like, okay, this is all I have to work with right now. I think I knew a few people in HR at larger companies. So the first thing I did, because I was really down on myself, I felt like I didn't know what I was good at anymore. I didn't know what job I could possibly have if it wasn't the same thing I had already been doing. So the first thing I did was I did a bit of a tour around to the people that I knew really knew me and believed in me and said, like, you got to tell me, what am I good at? I'm sorry, to put this on you, but I need to hear it. I need a little bit of a boost here. And once I did that kind of listening tour, or more of an audit, I'd say, I had some ideas. And then that's when I went over to the next step of the process, which was talking to people in people operations and HR and the resume writer and saying, hey, I'm starting to gather pieces of here's what I think I'm good at. Here's what I think that might look like in a job. But can you tell me more about what you do?
Mm-hmm.
And so that I could get a better understanding, again, kind of creating this hypothesis and experiment of what do you all do? Is that something I think I want to do? And then how do I position myself for it? So
Mm-hmm.
after talking to all of them, at the end of every conversation, I would say, is there anyone else that you think I should speak with? So at some point, somebody had said, yes, I think you should speak with this career coach. And I spoke with them. I was like, oh, this is a job. Interesting. I have never heard of this. How come everybody doesn't have a coach? Why
Yeah.
isn't this more prevalent? It would be so helpful. And it was like an instant unlock for me. I think simultaneous with that, I actually had stumbled upon the Happen to Your Career podcast as well. So that was helping me get my feet under me too, along with some other podcasts and books. But I really went on this learning journey about myself and
Mm-hmm.
trying to take in as much information as possible. And I had that moment of, oh, this is a thing that I feel really passionately about. Nobody should have to go through the experience that I just went through. Everybody should have a partner that helps them say, hold on, what are we aiming for here? How do you want to be? How do you want to live? What do you want to be known for? All these bigger questions that I think in people's careers you can just kind of get set aside because you're so focused on an end goal.
Mm-hmm. I've recognized just from talking to you about your career that it seems like you're really, really good at using your curiosity to take action through experimentation. Like you've done it since the very beginning. And then instead of just sitting and looking at job boards for something that you thought might fit you better when you burned out, you decided to take to the streets and start talking to people about things that you were interested in just naturally, which is very impressive. And I feel like it makes sense that you've ended up as a career coach because you were just naturally doing the things that we say that people should do unconventionally. You were
Yeah.
already doing them. So that's really impressive.
Thanks. I appreciate that. Yeah, I think that my career up to that point had prepared me to say, let me survey the land, let me take it all in, let me be curious about it, and also let me not be scared to go try the next thing. If anything, I had learned over the previous 10 years that I could be whoever I wanted to be. I mean, I had worked in a new industry every couple of years. I had built companies from the ground up. And I kind of felt like there was no challenge I couldn't take on as long as it felt in alignment with the way that I wanted to work. So I'd say the last step of the process for me was really identifying my own value statement as if I was a business. Before I even said I'm going to be a career coach, before I said I'm going to hang my own shingle and start my own business, I said, okay, what are my values? How do I want to operate so that I know I'm in alignment? I needed some sort of guiding principle there. And it came down to kindness, service, growth, and impact. So I knew I really wanted to work with kindness and with kind people. So any environment that was not aligned with that was just not going to be the right one for me. I wanted to serve ambitious people, really to help them be their best, but however they defined best. And really acknowledging that everybody has different seasons of their life. And, if their best is becoming COO, great. If their best is saying, hey, I want a job that is in alignment with my values and the way that I want to work and allows me to maybe work on some of my bad habits, great. I'm here for that. I wanted to help others grow and make sure that curiosity and learning were always present. And then last, I really wanted to generate an impact. And I defined impact. This took me a little while to think of it on a different level. But I define impact as if I can just help one person be happier in the workplace, then they'll probably be happier at home and they'll probably be kinder throughout their life to others. And then there's that ripple effect there. So I really believe on affecting change on like a one-on-one level rather than working from this big global impact all the way down to the individual.
When you look back at your early career and those threads that you were enjoying that were piecing all of the different things together, what are you still able to use in your current role?
Yeah, I use all of it. So I first and foremost, it really is hearing what other people are saying beyond, the words that they're using. So what's really behind what my clients are saying, and then being able to work with them to better understand that, and then move into a little bit more of that tactical problem solving side of things too. So self-awareness is incredibly important. But at some point, we also have to bring it into real life and say, okay, how do we want that to show up? And then what are the actual changes I can be making? Or how can I be talking about myself differently to get where I want to go?
Mm-hmm. That's, I think, proof of how we can connect one industry to another or one job to another that don't seem like they relate. But if you are interested in in two different industries, your personal strengths, your skills, you can pull those out and say, what did I enjoy? What did I do well in this? And figure out how you can frame it to transition to another. So I just think your experiences back then and where you've come now seem different, but you're still, like you said, using so many of the same skills and obviously your strengths. So
yeah, there's problem solving, there's immense amount of curiosity and questioning in a kind way. So I think it's always healthy to challenge others on their beliefs and, it's what they're saying. Is that really what they mean? Or are they trying to say something else? And then also really figuring out, okay, how can we make a system for you to move forward? How do we stop jumping to the end goal and instead say, what is it that I think I want? Is that end goal even fit those desires? Because people are very, very quick to say, here's the vehicle, but they don't stop and think about what are they actually trying to achieve. So when you can spend time there, you can better identify here maybe are the multiple vehicles to get there. Now, which one do I want to try on?
yeah. Earlier when you were talking about trying out law, we realized in law school and then in your first year of law, like this is not a fit. Do you remember when you did all of your experimenting and started your business for career coaching? Was there a moment when you were like, "Oh, yep, this is it. I
Yeah,
found it."
every moment. No, I think that it was a healthy restart for me on a few different planes. So one, I got to build the business side. So I really enjoy, what was going to be my branding? How was I going to talk about myself, my services I was offering? Who did I want to work with? Do I understand that audience? So I'd say, coaching aside, I loved getting in and being able to build another business.
Mhm.
But really, it was the putting my coaching hat on and being able to have that first formal, official coaching conversation with someone, I was like, oh, yes, this is why I'm doing this. And this is the thing that I want to do no matter what moving forward. So if it ever takes a different form, I know coaching will still be in there.
So if you could talk to your early law school self now, what advice would you give her?
Oh gosh. If I'm being honest, I don't know if I would give any advice. I am very, very grateful for the windy path that got me to where I am today. So I think individually, each of the experiences I had were incredibly valuable. They've made me the coach and the person that I am. So I think that maybe subconsciously, what I was doing, maybe as advice, I would explicitly say, keep paying attention to what gives you energy and what drains you. Keep paying attention to the identities that you're adopting and whether you even need to take on those identities. And keep being curious and trying new things.
Yeah, that's honestly the best answer because there shouldn't be any regret looking back on your career
Yeah.
journey because even the bad experiences, you learn about yourself, you learn some skills, so that's a really good answer, honestly.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I learned so much in the hard moments. And even, the good moments I think that I took for granted when I started being a coach, I was like, oh, I didn't realize that I had this whole other set of skills that I hadn't tapped into before, or maybe I had and I just didn't know it, but I had also absorbed from all of the people that I had worked with.
Mhm.
So I think that I really understand 360 degrees around an individual, but also around so many different careers and industries, because I really did have to learn many, many industries from the ground up,
Mhm.
especially in the consulting firm. I was thrown into working with finance companies, hospitality groups. I mean, so many different areas of business that I can really see all the steps forward, regardless of the function or the industry.
Mhm. I keep thinking back to the ladies in the startup that you first worked with that you mentioned, how empowering they were. Seems it could have been a game changer for you because not so many, but many people have, you know, not the best bosses that are really discouraging and they think that's all there is. But you were shown pretty early on that when you hit a ceiling to keep on moving, you don't have to. It seems like they taught you so many lessons just from the beginning and they were so encouraging. And that's probably why you've become not solely, but a big reason you've become the leader that you are because you were shown that. So I think that is an important thing to show leaders just how much of an impact you can have on even the youngest people. Who knows if you have high schoolers working for you or young college kids or early adult, so formidable. And even just letting them go or telling them to find a new job.
Yeah. And I think that's the ripple effect that I think of where I'm like, okay, if
Mhm.
let's say I'm working with a manager and they got the job, they're past the first 90 days, and then we're continuing to work together on what kind of manager do they want to be and are their words and actions matching up? And if they're a better manager to their direct reports, those direct reports, if let's say early in their career, are going to remember that and are going to learn from it. And they're probably going to want to emulate that type of manager in their next role or when they are managing others. So just like everyone I've worked with, I attribute my success to, good or bad. I think that happens to all of us. It's the people that we're surrounded by that really make us who we are.
Mhm. Another thing I wanted to call out is how you really enjoyed each of your roles at the very beginning, it seems, maybe besides law school, but move after or law
Yeah.
your law job. But after that, it seems like you really enjoyed it and then you eventually got to a point where you wanted to move on. A lot of people, it seems, think that if they once loved their job, that there's something wrong with them almost if they're now disliking it. And you might have just grown out of your role or things might have changed at the role. And it seems like people have a hard time accepting that it's time to move on if they once really loved their job.
Yeah, it's like a death in a way, right? We mourn what was. I think the way to reframe it is that it doesn't fit anymore. And that's okay because you grew. You had, be thankful for the experience. It was wonderful. You did enjoy it. And now, for whatever the reasons are that it has changed. So rather than fight that, it's probably better to accept it and figure out, okay, what's next from here? And then in your next role, it is, okay, if maybe the change before in my previous role was partially because of me, did I do something, quote, wrong? When you're in your new role, you can continue working on that. So again, figuring out how you want to work and making sure that you are moving towards that.
So we're close to wrapping it up.
Yeah.
I know I already asked you to give advice to your past self, but what about, what advice would you give someone who's right there on the cusp of thinking they want to make a change, or they're burnt out, or they just want to do something different, or their work doesn't add to their life anymore? Somebody who's right there thinking about making a change.
Yeah. If you're right on the edge or your work is giving you pause, why wait any longer? There is no reason to sit in a state of misery to the point where you feel like you have no choice and you have to make a jump or leap or hit that big reset button. I think if you at all have feelings of that bubbling up, that it's best to address it and feel a little bit more honestly in control of it. I think it puts you in a place of just much more power over how things are going to unfold.
Most of the episodes you've heard on Happen to Your Career showcase stories of people that have taken the steps to identify and land careers that they are absolutely enamored with, that match their strengths and are really what they want in their lives. If that's something that you're ready to begin taking steps towards, that's awesome. And we want to figure out how we can help. So here's what I would suggest. Take the next 5 seconds to open up your email app and email me directly. I'm going to give you my personal email address, scott@happentoyourcareer.com. Just email me and put conversation in the subject line. And when you do that, I'll introduce you to someone on our team who can have a super informal conversation with, and we'll figure out the very best type of help for you, whatever that looks like, and the very best way that we can support you to make it happen. So send me an email right now with conversation in the subject line. Here's a sneak peek into what we have coming up in store for you next week.
It just became very clear to me the level of unconsciousness that I had been living with and that lack of intentionality throughout my entire history.
Have you ever looked at your work calendar or to-do list and thought, I don't want to do one single thing on this entire very long list? You might think this is normal, that you should just put your head down and push through. But actually, if you experience this over and over for a long period of time, it's pretty likely a red flag that you're not working in your strengths, and it's time for a change. All that and plenty more next week right here on Happen to Your Career. Make sure that you don't miss it. And if you haven't already, click subscribe on your podcast player so that you can download this podcast in your sleep and you get it automatically, even the bonus episodes, every single week, sometimes multiple times a week. Until next week, adios. I'm out.